Hi, I'm Milla and welcome to another Milla's Game Room video. I'm Milla, we talk about here video games, etc. and so on and so forth. This is the first video of 2023, so thank you for tuning in. If you like the channel, liking, commenting, subscribing, notification bell, stuff like that would help a lot, so thank you so much. This video is going to be about, well, my backlog plans for 2023, my collection goals, which the shelf here won't grow by itself, and then finally a bit about how that will link to content, because obviously if you're going to be talking about games on a channel like this, obviously what you play is going to affect what you cover, so we're going to touch on that. And so yeah, it's going to be pretty cool. First off, I'm going to start with the backlog stuff, because I feel that's probably like the most relevant at the moment, because it is like past tense and stuff. Because okay, I worked on all these games in the last year, I did loads, but what I did have was I had like a mental list of games to play, and I think I even wrote into like a prompt or a photo, which I did. Many of them I did play, many of them I also did not. So I had I had too rigid goals basically. I'm going to play all these exact 20 games, and then I actually didn't even touch many of the games. If I did, only played a few hours or something like that. So it's like, yeah, that's just too rigid, and it's not the best thing to do if you're making a backlog. So not trying that again. Instead, what I'm going to be doing for my backlog is I'm going to be doing like 3 broad categories. So I primarily play visual novels and RPGs in terms of what video games I have, not only in terms of the collection here, outside of Nintendo games, but I'll get to that, but also because they're just they are the most time consuming, and it's like, if I wanted to play them, it's just easy having a list of what I want to play, but it also means I can't really get around to other things easily. Plus also there's a general facet of, life happens. Stuff can happen where you have to put a game down, or you can't be playing text heavy stuff all the time and stuff like that. It's just a bit too just too rigid. And for me, being able to have that list there, have a bit of flexibility, and then they can be broken up with other things got a couple of Kirby games I want to play through. Obviously it'll be more Nintendo stuff and platformers from Nintendo and third-party devs and stuff that can break it up, and other things. Taiko Tatshin as well, because no doubt there'll be a new Taiko next year, and I've still got to play some of the old ones. And a bunch of things like that, so that's what my list is going to be focused towards. So anything else is just a bonus really, but that's okay. So the first thing that I'm going to have as a category, which is going to be intentionally quite open so that I can pick things up, and it's actually quite good to have this this category, because there's been a lot of these the last few years, as you probably will be aware if you've dabbled into Switch RPGs, and that is playing through more of Square Enix's classic backlog. If you don't know much about RPGs, basically Square Enix, especially in the past before they merged in the early 2000s, they made some of the most iconic RPGs, so obviously Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts as well, but other things as well. So things like, the Saga series, the Mana series, Xenogears, Tactics Ogre, and a bunch of other things. Just way, way, way too many to list. Oh, and the Chrono series as well. And a lot of them last few years. In fact, pretty much everything on that list I've just said except Xenogears has been remastered on the Switch in some form. So technically I've already been starting this goal of playing retro Square Enix stuff, because as of late I have been playing the very recently released Tactics Ogre Reborn remaster. So this is a remaster of the 1995 game originally from the Super Nintendo, called Tactics Ogre Letters Cling Together. We never got that release. It got ports to our platforms, mainly the PlayStation 1, which was the one a lot of people know of because Atlas localized that. I think it's also worth noting that although this game wasn't originally made by Square Enix, it was made by a company called Quest Corporation. Firstly, Square Enix bought Quest in the early 2000s, if you think a couple of years after they merged actually. And secondly, the director of this game, Tactics Ogre, would go on to, well, make Final Fantasy Tactics, which is, well, obviously a Square Enix game. It's got Final Fantasy in the name, and it's very similar gameplay-wise from what I've seen so far. I do really like it. So for me, it's like, I'm really glad that I've been able to dig into it, and these remasters with things like quality of life improvements, accessibility. This game has a turn rewind system kind of similar to Utawaremono, which I've talked about in another video, which I'll also link if I remember, because, well, it's Utawaremono, it's not related. And I've played plenty of Aqua Plus this year, in case you've not been following my channel, but yeah, so probably know Aqua Plus has a miracle happens with localization, hint hint. So I'm going to be working on that. There's also a bunch of others. I mean, some others I want to play include, I want to try out a Saga game, and there's a bunch on the Switch. There are some remasters of, well, Saga Frontier, Saga Scarlet Grace, which is the new one, but technically that was a port because the original was a Vita exclusive and only came out in Japan because, well, it's a PS Vita exclusive. Unless if it's not visual novel or ecchi, it has no chance of coming to the West. And definitely not now, because the Vita is well and truly dead for real. Yeah, I was completely off track. But I do have some other gaps, like, first off, I am going to confess an ultimate gaming sin. I am a fake gamer because it's all shrink wrapped. And this is the DS version of Chrono Trigger. I do want to dig into this. I remember getting this when Square Enix were like, we're going to release Chrono Trigger on Steam, but actually let's just do a shit version, and that's basically what they did. And it's like, you know, I'm just going to pick this up instead. But I've still never played it. Like, it's been sat sealed for literally years, so that is going to be on the list. I don't know exactly when I'll play that, but I know it's like, if you were to ask like an RPG fan, but especially an older RPG fan, like one in their like 30s or 40s, so older than me by a substantial number of years, they would say play Chrono Trigger. Like, I think there's probably a minority of people that don't like it, but generally it's accepted that you need to play Chrono Trigger because, well, it's classic Square Enix, and that was basically a game that was made in collaboration between Square and Enix while they were separate companies, basically. And, you know, it's Chrono Trigger, so I'll have to give it a try. But this isn't on Switch, so I've got DS version, but Chrono Cross, that got remastered on the Switch. I wanted to get that actually, but I haven't, so, you know, guess I'm gonna have to play Trigger first. And the next general category I have is kind of more, I say general, but it's actually on a specific franchise. And if you know anything about my gaming taste, you might be able to guess what one this is. And it is the Legend of Heroes Trails series. Well, I think a lot of people are probably aware of the situation with that series. But basically this year, we're getting 3 Trails localizations. Unless things go catastrophically wrong with regards to localizations, by the end of the year we will have Trails to Azure, Trails into Reverie, and Nayuta Endless Trails, or no, Legend Nayuta Boundless Trails into English officially, because all of them have fan translations, and Nayuta Endless Trails is what was chosen for the PSP fan translation. And that one was not actually bought by NICE, unlike the other two, so, you know, that was, it's going to be interesting to see how they go. And with Reverie in particular, you need to play all the previous games. Like, at the very least, you need to play the Cold Steel Arc and Crossbell, because otherwise you're going to get fucking lost from what I've seen. Like, even looking in the gameplay for, like, the Crossbell games, you bloody see characters and Trails in the Sky, and it's like, generally it's recommended to start the Trails series in order. And the last time I played a Trails game, well, was last year. I played the fan-patched version of Trails in the Sky Evolution. This is an unofficial mod that uses Xseed's translation of Trails in the Sky, and it basically releases it on the currently to date definitive version. So, like, you have Trails in the Sky the first, second, and third. Like, they've got a really, like, chaotic release history because it was, like, in the days of text-heavy localization. It was a pain for them. It's got a hugely, like, wild story behind it, which I'm not going into here. But obviously, because of that, it meant only one of them was actually physical. And the other two, you can only really get on PC now. To dig into that and get the second and third games finished using those patches, which I hear the second game is meant to be the best one out of that arc. I know a lot of people love it. It's apparently twice as long, so it's kind of why I'm putting it off. And then Trails in the Sky, the third's a really, like, from what I understand, is basically kind of like a dungeon crawler. Instead of like the rest of the series, which are basically open world. So after I've done Trails in the Sky and Trails in like Crossbell Arc, there's just Cold Steel 3 and 4, because I played 1 and 2 years ago on the Vita. They were fantastic games. They kind of was, I've got my own story with those, which I'll probably go into another time, but I played them ages ago. I did overall really like them. 3 and 4 I've not played yet, and then there'll be when I can jump into Reverie, and maybe by the time Kurona Kazeki gets an English release, because, well, NICE taking down the Zero Field fan translation spreadsheet basically confirms that they've picked it up, but for obvious reasons are not going to announce it yet, which I'm totally cool with, by the way. But yeah, I really hope that I can get through some of them. I want to at least get through the Sky Arc and maybe try some of Crossbell before the end of the year. I don't know if I'll be able to do that though. I do know that I do intend to play Naruto Day 1, because that game is standalone. You don't need to play any of the other Trails series to understand it. It's entirely standalone. Well, at least until Falcom decides to shoehorn the plot in that into a later Trails entry, like they're kind of known to do with all these references and stuff. Hence why Reverie is basically you have to play the Crossbell Arc and the Sky Arc first, but not Sky. Well, Sky apparently. Well, you're supposed to play Sky as well, but you have to play Cold Steel as well, at the bare minimum. So you know. Yeah, Trails is a bit of a mess, if you can't tell. The third thing is, well, classic visual novels. This is something else I've already been starting, like if you've been listening to the podcast, I've talked about Higurashi arcs before, because I've been starting to play those, but I've also been, like, I've got plans on to play more, especially if they're, like, really highly rated on VNDB, like, the top like 10 on VNDB that have English anyway, like the vast majority of them are available officially. White Hammer 2 is the other one I played, and obviously played that. I can talk about that one, but the rest of them is like, well, When They Cry 1 and 2, for example, they're on there, which is Higurashi Mineko, a bunch of others as well, like Muffled Alternative, Fast Morgana, and other games. Like some of them I've started or not finished because I dropped them ages ago, partly because some of them can be really fucking heavy with their content. So that's just a bit of a warning there. That's one reason why it's taken a while. But of course there's Steins Gate as well. In fact, I have Steins Gate here actually, so you know, this is on there. Best part is you can play all of them on PC in terms of that top 10, but some of them on console as well, and Steins Gate is kind of the most popular one, which even if you don't really follow VN's March at all, you probably know that this game exists, even though it is like, you could argue it's been superseded by the Elite version, but there's still value in this original because, well, it's the OG. That's like, you can't ever replace an OG, and here is the OG. And then, of course, in terms of other VNs as well, I think the other one that's on the list I want to finally get around to are more games by Visual Arts and Key, because if you know anything about visual novels, when the medium really kicked off in the 90s, there were two companies that really led it. Aquaplus, which under their Leaf brand, which is a history of its own, and I've played enough of their games for a while, but also Key, which is Visual Arts Key, so you'll know them for Clanad. So yeah, I've got a Switch version here, so you know, I hope to play this at some point. It'll be this or the PC, because I got it on Steam before it got announced for Switch in the West and just like never played it, so that's on the list as well. And more Otome games as well, so there's also Colex Malice as well, which is like, is actually, I think, is one of, if not the only Otome game on the first like page of the most highly rated VNDB games, so it kind of counts as a really highly rated VNDB game as well, so that's something else to play as well. Other things like ELVNs as well, because I need to play more of those, because ELVNs and indie VNs, I need to play them, because I know some of them are really fucking great, but I've not fucking played them. So in terms of collection goals, I'm thinking for that, like, for various reasons, like, a lot of personal stuff as well, so like, I'm wanting to like, really like, limit what I pick up, so I don't want to pick up as much as I'd want to, especially in terms of the Switch, because the Switch over the last few years, I've missed out on so many like physical releases I wanted. Well, obviously I can still get them now, but some of them will be more expensive, well, such as, well, the Alliance Alive Switch version, which is physical and is ridiculously expensive. So for me, the Switch games, that will be my main collecting focus, but I will want to like catch up with the ones I missed when I can, but I just will not be buying as much. It's if at all, like, I'll still be adding games obviously, but I will be really limiting what I pick up to make sure that I can get what I want and to not only support, but also with the back of their mind thought to like, what am I going to cover on the channel? Because on the channel for me, it's like, kind of having this back in the mind thought, like, is this something I could potentially talk about on the channel in the future? And for me, in my head, it's like, if I'm probably not going to do it, unless it's like a childhood game or something that's really obscure that would probably only come up in a collection video, which I'm hoping to do some of those at some point again, then I'm probably not going to talk about it. Like, it's just like, or if I'm going to play a game to rank it, for example, like, well, not make more of those developer sequel videos like with the Atlas video. I really like making that one, and I do want to pick up more of the games that I haven't played in that video that I don't own to actually play for it. I already own a fair chunk of Atlas's library, like especially on the 3DS. That's the big one that I have their games for, and the other ones I just don't. But you know, I think for me, just wanting to like really focus on Switch games and other games that I can actually cover on the channel, and really have this like diverse range of goodness to like ramble about. And that's to me what Milla's game is about, because I do want to have something where the not only means a lot to me, but also just is a bit more sustainable in terms of what I pick up as well, because sustainability is something else that's been on my mind. Like, getting physical games is good, but if it's things like forksicles or games that require like mandatory downloads to play or similar shit, like, that's just eco waste. So for me, I don't want that. Like, if it's a lot of like big budget Switch games that I would have wanted to get, at the moment I found that they were demo only or forksicle, I just stopped giving a shit, because that's not a release, that's eco waste. And I don't want that shit in my collection. So basically, quality over quantity, really limit what I pick up, and just really enjoy my games and what they are, you know? All of that will be factored into what I like pick up and what I play, and to think about to help curate this little like game room place, this like goals, and just have something that I really enjoy and really enjoy too when I record stuff. So yeah, if you've got any games you're looking forward to like this year or plan to play from your backlog, or what your collection goals are for any platform, any genre, etc., let me know. I'd love to hear what people are collecting or wanting to play. I think next week I'll be going back to my regular upload schedule, but I'm still kind of T-bay on that. I might stick to just alternate between podcast episode and video, and podcast episode and video, and add an extra one when I can, like I was doing before. So I think I'll just stick to that as a little schedule, but I'll just I have the community tab function, so I'll be posting updates about that if that changes on that tab as well. So thank you very much for listening today. Again, if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, notification bell, etc. Please look forward to new stuff, and have a wonderful year. Bye bye.